welcome to Change the Culture, a podcast dedicated to preventing and reducing interpersonal violence through empowerment self-defense. Studies have shown that 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men, and 1 in 5 children experience interpersonal violence in their lifetime. Isolation caused by the pandemic has increased incidence of domestic violence by more than 30%, and this is why we're here. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Orenstein, and I am your host of the Change the Culture podcast at My Power and producer of My Power Casts. My Power is a social tech startup dedicated to reducing and preventing interpersonal violence through technology, education, and community. We are here to speak to individuals and professionals committed to preventing and ending interpersonal violence around the world. So thanks for joining us. Welcome to today's guest, Sarah McArthur. Hi, Sarah, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for being here on the Change the Culture podcast. And just a little bit of introduction to Sarah. Sarah is the president and CEO of Power of XYZ, which is a modern boutique creative agency dedicated to the element of storytelling, advocating for violence prevention. They utilize out-of-the-box approaches to tell the story of the people behind the brand. Power of XYZ offers a multitude of media, business, consulting, marketing, and event services. Sarah found passion and purpose in impact through Impact's Personal Safety of Colorado, where she grew from student to instructor and eventually executive director before becoming a life coach, healer, and author. Through her journey, Sarah uncovered what drove her on a deeper level, empowering people to live their most authentic and empowered lives. Thank you, Sarah, for being here. I'm really happy to have you on the show. You and your team at Power of XYZ are instrumental in the existence of this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I was really excited when I saw your email, and I'm really glad to be here. And I'm glad that our team is able to help your dream come to life and help tell you the story of violence prevention and changing the culture through violence prevention. So it's pretty exciting for me to be here, kind of full circle in a way.
Amazing, amazing. So maybe you can share with our listeners about your journey and what led you to ESD and becoming an impact instructor. I mean, it's a big step. So how did you get to this?
I got there. I got there in my 20s, late 20s. But actually, the story starts in my youth. When I was young, I just, through different circumstances, experienced violence in different ways through bullying at school. I'm a survivor of sexual assault. I've experienced different in-home, dysfunctions, things like that. So I think that there was a multitude of experiences that I had as a young person that caused me to feel unsafe in the world. I really struggled with fear most of my life, afraid to do things by myself, afraid to go for a walk on alone, or adventure by myself, or travel by myself, or really I just spend my life afraid. And it became such a big, I would say, struggle in my life that I really didn't go outside at night alone. If I needed to go somewhere at night, I felt really scared and really concerned about what might happen to me. I know that when I was in my 20s, I was married already. I was young. I got married young, and I really felt like I had to rely on my husband at the time, to protect me, to go out with me at night, to make sure that I felt safe. And there came a time in my late 20s, and then let me back up in a minute there and say that, the fear was one piece, anxiety was one part of the symptoms of my trauma, but other parts of my trauma were that I didn't know how to speak up for myself. I was really timid. I walked very meekly. I felt very meek. I struggled in education, learning disabilities. In my late 20s, I was also diagnosed with ADHD. So there was sort of this whirlwind of struggle happening in my 20s. And that all stemmed from all these experiences that happened in my youth. So in
Hmm.
my 20s, I found a therapist who was fantastic. So I've been through different therapists, but he was really instrumental in helping me to understand my diagnosis from ADHD, the levels of anxiety that I was living in, which were really high at the time, how to manage both of those, how to start
Hmm.
processing my trauma. And I think sort of those ideas, those the self-awareness, the self-learning, and the understanding that my brain works differently than other people began my journey of empowerment, really. It was also at that time that my sister-in-law said, "Hey, they're having this self-defense course at, a police academy. Would you go with me?" And so I said, "Sure," because I just felt afraid so much. I said, Let's go do it." So we went to
Hmm.
a program. It was like a few hours at a police academy. And the one thing that I took away is they talked about this book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. And I was at this time, as empowerment was growing for me, I wanted to know more about my own personal safety and continued empowerment. So I started reading the book, which is a hard book to read if you're a trauma survivor. In that book, Gavin de Becker talks about a course called Impact Personal Safety. As I began to read about impact, I was really intrigued about didn't know there were programs like this that you could go and take courses that could help continue your empowerment, help you to feel safe. And I reached out. I said, "Okay, well, let me see if there's anything in Colorado." So I looked. I found a bunch of different chapters around, and it just so happens that a few years previously, Impact came to Colorado through Amelia and David Dorn. And so I called her and I said, "I'm really interested in this program." And so she said, "Let's meet, let's have coffee." And we did. I told her a little bit about my story. I told her why I wanted to take the program. And then the next class that was available was actually, I believe, in October, 11 years ago. So my anniversary has come up.
Wow.
And
Wow. Amazing.
yeah, it's exciting. And I took that class. It was over 2 weekends, I believe,
Hmm.
and I felt transformed. I felt confident. I felt empowered. I felt like I knew what to do. I felt like
Hmm.
I became more aware of what my default responses are. So for me, I'm more timid, so I wouldn't speak up for myself. Maybe I wouldn't assert my voice, or I wouldn't set a boundary, or if somebody was asking me personal information, I didn't know what else to do, so I would just tell them the things that I didn't want to be telling them. I know
Hmm.
that um, I found out that I freeze and I flee more than I like to fight. So it was really much more than just a self-defense class. It was a class in self-awareness and
Wow.
how I experience um, different scenarios, how I experience threat or fear, and what happens to me in that. I just remember feeling so empowered.
Wow. It's beautiful. You were able to tap into different ways to handle this anxiety, to handle these fears. In our last podcast, we had on Nicole Snell, who talked about traveling solo and all that. There are fears that and anxiety that plague us on the day
Yes.
to day, and you were able to kind of take a 180 and empower yourself and learn the tools
Mm,
to empower yourself. So, can you share with our listeners a little bit specific about the before impact and after impact, a scenario that
mm.
you came across afterwards that you're like, now I know what to do here, and it served you.
There's a couple of things that I think. I think that because my first response is that if I felt threatened or scared, I often found myself shutting down rather than taking action because I didn't know what to do. So I
Hmm.
have two experiences. Like I said, if people talk to me, if maybe a man approached me and started a conversation, wanted to know where I lived or my name, I found myself giving them that information
Mhm.
and not being able to say no and draw those boundaries. And as a result of that, I feel like it, in the phrase response in my life, I feel like it was part of my experience going through sexual assault, right? Not knowing what to do, having my body freeze, those type of things. So when I think about the lessons I learned, I had two experiences after impact that really showed me that change. One was I was getting gas in the evening time, and I noticed the vehicle and a person in it, and just kind of got an awareness. So impact teaches you to listen to your intuition. So I got an awareness of my intuition. So I thought I'm just going to keep an eye on. So as soon
Right.
as I finished, I got in my car and I started leaving the gas station, and that person started leaving the gas station. And
Oh,
I made a right turn and he made a right turn.
oh, wow.
And so I changed lanes and they changed lanes. And so I thought, I don't know if this is something, but this certainly is making me feel real uncomfortable. So what I'm going to
Mhm.
do is I know there's a shopping center up here, and I'm going to pull into that shopping center because there's a McDonald's and go inside and see, ask for help from, to call the police or whatever that looks like. And so
Mhm.
I pulled in, and there was another entrance a little bit down, and that person pulled in and then backed into a spot, so sort of just
Wow.
waiting. And then I ended up going
Oh,
into the McDonald's. I asked for the manager. I said, I would like to use your phone, maybe to call the police. There's a person over here that I feel like followed me. And I pointed. And then and there was a glass window there. And as soon as I pointed that way, then their lights came on and they left the parking lot. So I felt
wow.
like I was able to take some sort of action to think through
Mm.
what I might be able to do to protect myself. In another instance, I um, was standing outside with my dog going to the restroom, and another gentleman came up, started talking to me, wanting personal information. When I told him I was not interested in having a conversation, he got really upset and started saying, all women are the same, and these kind of things that can make us feel like, oh no, to let our guard down or to feel upset. And I
Mhm.
was able to just stand my ground and repeat myself that I was not interested in having that conversation.
Mhm.
And eventually he did leave, and I just stood in my stance that we're taught, and I just stood in my stance and just waited, and waited until they were very far away before I decided to go back to my house. And there was a bit of me, after that, after they were no longer there, that I was just like, I totally impacted. I totally
Yeah,
protected myself.
absolutely. Wow, those are great success stories. Absolutely. You felt like you knew what to do when you needed to do it. Using the five principles of think, yell, run, fight, and tell. And when took Impact back in March, it was true also very transformative for me. And I saw all the a lot of participants. We all, I think it's also somewhat healing, and because we all go through such different things throughout our lives, and each of us carry something from
Mhm.
our past that we have to kind of let go of, or wish we had a second chance to redo.
Mhm.
And when we're given the opportunity in a course like Impact to respond in a way that's the ideal way, or to respond and to have a second chance at it, it's very empowering, and it's also healing. I understand that on your journey it had this ripple effect as well, not only for you but also for your family. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. After I took my impact class, I was completely in love. I said, I need to be involved. So I went to the founder, Amelia, said, how can I be involved? And she helped me to start assisting in classes. So I volunteered for a number of years, assisting in
Mhm.
classes and telling anybody who would listen about impact. Anybody who would listen to me, because I think that's all I talked about for a while.
Hmm.
During my time as an assistant, I was able to, like I said, I was talking to everybody, so I was able to talk to a lot of my family about the experiences I had, and as a result, we have generations that have now taken impact as a training. So my mom has been impact trained. My older sister has been
Wow.
impact trained. My younger sister has been impact trained. My sister-in-law has
Wow.
been impact trained. My brother has been impact trained, and then going down to the next generation, my son has been impact trained. He actually did two courses, one at 6 and I believe one at 8. And then my um, nieces, who were, I believe, 7 or 8 at the time, they have been trained. So we have a multi-generational ESD trained family.
Wow. We talk about, the podcast is called Change the Culture of Violence Through Empowerment Self-Defense. And here you are, an example of that. You're creating a culture of empowerment. You've taken your whole family and you've empowered them. That's amazing. But obviously, on a family level, it impacts us on how to handle one another in the family as well. Interpersonal violence that that unfortunately happens in homes, and we want to know how to respond to situations that aren't as serious necessarily, but situations that we don't necessarily want to escalate. We want to just communicate and communicate a boundary of what we're comfortable with, and you're leading by example.
Well, I will add that violence prevention sort of existed in my family before I even took my impact class. My older sister has been interpersonal or domestic violence advocate for years before I started. She is a survivor herself, and out of that, she became a fierce advocate, and she has done some incredible work. And I think it is through the inspiration of her being able to take her story and take that in the empowerment to advocate for others was a star for me, was a light for me to be able to follow in those paths. So she passed on that empowerment to me, and then in turn, she got involved in impact, and so it becomes a family of culture change makers or empowerers, um, that is really focused on changing our generation for the next to come. It doesn't mean our next to come generations don't go through anything, because they do, but they are being equipped to handle different situations, to set boundaries, to know what boundaries are, to have language around um, emotional intelligence. And we find that even the next generation that has not had any training, because of the grandmas and the moms and the aunties that all have
Mhm.
had training, and we respect the boundaries of the little ones in our homes, that even the next generation is living a different life than maybe the generations before them have, and they haven't been trained yet. And I say yet because my
Wow.
hope is that everybody will be.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. I hope my daughters will do impact as well. And moving from there, I'd like to share with our listeners of the Change the Culture podcast about the power of XYZ and the importance of, XYZ, the words, the letters and words, our voice and what you do, how it got started.
Yes, so Power of XYZ was dreamt up by myself and the CEO and founder of My Power, Judith Zidikman. So um, just really understanding the power of story, the power of sharing, the power of speaking out about ESD on a global level, as opposed to, um, you know, each person's story is very personal and very important. But when we can amplify that, it helps more people understand what ESD is. It brings ESD to more communities, and we shared a passion to try and make that happen. So we, through conversations, thought up Power of XYZ, and she's been a wonderful investor in our company to help us get started. We started off with a small staff of just myself and one other person, our designer, Michael Scott, who's also my husband. And and then, as we grew, we were able to develop a really wonderful team that now is multi-talented, multifaceted, empowered, and powerful. So it's really, really neat.
That's amazing. I see when I work with Nikki and Shannon and you and the team, I see a lot of passion in what you all have to do, what you all do and bring to the table. And it's exciting. It's exciting to work with you all because you really understand the why we're here, and you have the same why, and we share that. Getting this out into the world, empowerment, self-defense it has shown to prevent over 50% of violence, if I'm correct. When we have the right tools, we know how we could stay safer. So I understand that the company culture is a really important thing to you as well. So you can share about that.
Yes, I think that for me, ESD really is a large part of my life. So I took my
Mm.
class 11 years ago. Then it changed the trajectory of my career. So uh, I was not going down the path of violence prevention at that time, but it has done so. I became an instructor with Impact. I became the executive director there. I've done some of my own entrepreneurial work outside of Impact, but I've always been drawn back to ESD because, and
Mhm.
here's the reason. The reason is that I know how these skills, had I had them sooner, um, may have changed my life. And so I want that for
Right.
anybody and everybody. So I have tried, as I grow as a person, I'm somebody who's always trying to grow. And as I grow as a person, I try to incorporate ESD principles in my everyday life, in how I handle myself, how I handle with people. I still have a ways to grow. I don't get it perfect. I certainly make mistakes. I certainly step out of line in some areas. So it was really important for me that as I was creating a company and creating a culture, that we were living by the things that we believe in so deeply. So
Hmm.
we as a team in our strategy meetings, we're constantly looking at our values as a company, our values in ESD, and how we want to treat one another and how we want to treat others. And so that might be setting a hard boundary with somebody. That might be asking for a boundary for ourselves with one another.
Hmm.
So we've have a open communication. So I've had, when I've gotten really busy, sometimes I can be distant just because I've got so much going on. So we've opened a community where I've had different people on my team say, hey, you feel distant, what's going on? And so they feel comfortable being able to talk to me. So we emphasize culture and value. And we talk a lot about what our values are. We feel like if we're always focused on our values in EST, it will help to keep us sort of aligned.
Hmm. That's wonderful. And you're listening to one another and you're communicating, and you're creating voice. You're letting other people step into their comfort zone and communicate where how they work best. And
Mhm.
it's I bless that it continues to shine forth in the work that you do. And
Thank
I
you.
know that recently you guys got back, or your team got back from Chicago. You were at the PAVE Summit that you led in Chicago under Arlene Lemus. You can share a little bit about that.
Yes, the summit, the Pay Prevention Summit, was amazing. We're so privileged and happy to get to be part of the work of pay prevention, but also help them and support them in their summit. The
Mhm.
summit was a way of bringing a lot of leaders in the workplace together to talk about violence prevention from different sectors. So they had people in hospitality, they had people from the military, they had people in healthcare. It was really
Wow.
this variety of leaders from different sectors talking about how violence really does affect the workplace and all of these things. Pay prevention's mission is to bring, violence prevention into the workplace and change the culture of the workplace. And doing that by doing customized trainings to empower the employees, empower leadership, empower the things that they already have, so that everything gets created into a culture like we're talking about, of accountability, of empowering the individual. And that in itself will go out to the community. As people are getting empowered, they will, that will have an effect in their community. So we really love the work of pay prevention. For us, we feel really privileged. We've got to be there from the beginning with them, with their marketing, their branding, their communication skills,
Mhm.
social media. We get to support them in that way. We also, because we do events, we also got to support them in their event, and we were able to be there running their event from an audio visual virtual experience standpoint, and it was great. This is the part of the team where we have a culture of growth as well and learning, and so it took our almost our entire team to go to the PAVE Summit. So you have, the director of social media and the operations manager running the technical side of an online event. So you have the chief creative officer; he's running photography, and myself, I'm the CEO, and I'm running sound and video. And so, there's this transformation that happens even inside of our job, that we care about our expertise, but we also care about expansion. And so it's really neat to see our team be able to do both, to do it all.
That's amazing. And I know that you are leading the Violence Prevention Education Conference that's going to be virtual, coming this December.
Violence Prevention Education Conference started in 2020 with its kickoff year in Israel, right before the pandemic hit the world. It was a wonderful time. There were people from many different countries, I think 24 different countries or something, all came. The focus of the Violence Prevention Conference is to bring people who are doing violence prevention together, to learn from each other, to bring community to each other, to see how the intersections of what other people do versus what we do in ESD come together. It's really a wonderful place of community and of sharing. So then in
Mhm.
2021, we hit, the pandemic was going strong. So we ended up doing a virtual event. And then that virtual event, it was global. So we had people attending from all over the world. We had speakers from all over the world. So it was a 3-day event, and we had over 30 speakers. We ran simultaneous tracks. It was really incredible. Lots of wonderful
Wow.
topics. From violence prevention educators. And then 2022, we are having an online virtual experience in December. So December 10th and 11th, we'll be having an online virtual experience. And then 2023, our hope is to have it in person again in Israel, where it all started.
Amazing. Amazing. That's really exciting. I can't
It
wait to
is.
take part and to learn from all of you and all of this is why we're here. The Change the Culture podcast brings on individuals, professionals that are on the forefront of this fight and educating, and we're here to educate as much as we can about the tools. So it's really special to be part of that, to be part of that vision through Change the Culture podcast. So before we end off, we just have a few more minutes. I'd love to hear just again your why and who helped you along the way to really get you to where you are.
Mhm. Um, there's been a lot of people that helped me along my way. So I'm very close to my siblings. And so that network has always been there when I've needed the network of my siblings. I've had wonderful therapists that have helped me. I've had wonderful friends. I've had teachers that have helped me along the way. I have had professionals that saw something more in me at the time than I could see in myself and would sort of make opportunities for expansion. Like they saw it before I saw it and they said, I think she can do this. And so they would provide an opportunity for expansion. And those opportunities really helped me to become more and more of who I am. And then, yeah, my Impact family from Impact Personal Safety in Colorado, that family is one of my favorite. Working with them for many, many years. Um, they've always have a place in my heart. Unfortunately, I'm not there anymore in Colorado, but they're not ever far from my heart. So, um, and then of course the ESD world, I've met so many wonderful people. UD, working with Arlene, working with My Power, working with Impact Global. We've worked with so many people in the past that is really exciting just to meet, get to know people, learn their whys. So, and that goes into my why. And I think my why is always going to go back to my passion to making sure this becomes accessible for anybody and everybody we can make it accessible for. So, whatever country we can get it into, whatever school we can get it into, whatever, you know, whatever workplace we can get into, whatever university, wherever we can get ESD. I have, as an instructor, I have watched the impact that ESD has on people's lives. And I have always been passionate about how do we spread it? How do we make it accessible to more people?
Thank you again to Sarah McArthur of Power of XYZ. Sarah, share with us how people can reach out.
You're welcome to visit our website, which is www.powerofxyz.com, or you can email us at info@powerofxyz.com.
Perfect. So thank you again to our listeners of the Change the Culture podcast and to you, Sarah McArthur. We would love to hear from our listeners. You can email me at annie.orenstein@mypower.co.il, or pop over to the Change the Culture Facebook page and share your thoughts, questions, and success stories with us. And you're more than welcome to catch up on our latest podcast where we had on the show Judith Siddickman, Arlene Lemus, Renee Wenz, Tasha Ina Church from Hawaii. We want you to be part of the conversation and part of the solution. So stay tuned for the next Change the Culture podcast, where we will hear from more professionals in the field of ESD around the world. Thank you.